Probably the most unglamorous part of the content creation process is everything that goes somewhat unrealized. If you're like me, you get a lot of different ideas and start working on different things and playing different games and writing different scripts, and sometimes you just have to sit back and say, this isn't a good enough video or something that's worthwhile. For me, that is usually a very disappointing realization because it means that I have now wasted some time on getting content done, which means you, the viewer, have to wait longer. And usually, if I start working on a project, it's because I think there's something there or it's something that I want to talk about. But I'm committed more than anything to releasing videos that I think are good and worthwhile and that you, the viewer, would want to watch. So that does mean occasionally admitting that things aren't going to work out the way you think they're going to. What's interesting is that I've found in the last year or so, there have been about 3 or 4 instances where videos I've shelved have actually been D&D games. Now, if you know anything about a lot of the work I do for Dungeons & Dragons, a lot of it comes from an interest in archiving this stuff. I like making videos about old D&D games and old D&D content because it is something of a video library archive for them here on my channel. I know it's not anything official, but it's just something that I really like to do. So I become even more disappointed when I start working on a D&D project that I realize won't come to fruition. So I got this idea, and this video is going to be very different because it's frankly going to be something of an oxymoron. In this video, I'm going to talk about the D&D games that I can't find reason to make a video for. It's the best of both worlds. I get to talk about them, and it also lets me archive them. I will be showing them off in this video to some extent, and let them have their day in the limelight. Everybody wins. This video is going to be a bit different. I'm going to do it almost in the similar format to the podcast video D&D chats that I've been doing lately. I am so entrenched in all these games and I've done so much research that I'm just going to kind of let it rip about what my plans for the videos were, what the games actually are, and so on, and why I won't be making videos about them, obviously. Now, the one I'm going to start with first, I'm starting with because there is some sort of chance I will talk about it in the future. The following 3, I would say there is almost 0 chance unless something very different happens. But for this one, there is something of a chance, and that game is War of the Lance. Now this, released in 1989 originally, and then in 1990 for DOS. It was in 1989 for the Apple II, in 1990 for the DOS. The DOS for DOS systems. This is one of the Silverbox games. I previously talked about a Silverbox game in Heroes of the Lance, which was the side-scroller game, and what's interesting about this game, not only was the fact that it was actually developed by Strategic Simulations, as opposed to US Gold, but it is a turn-based strategy game. And it takes place, obviously, in the Dragonlance setting. And it's somewhat interesting that, unlike Heroes of the Lance and Dragons of Flame, it is not actually based on a specific module, it's just sort of set in the world. But what's most interesting about this game is that, again, it's a turn-based strategy game that actually has the capability to be played by 2 people. The first player plays as the Whitestone forces, while the second player plays as the High Lord forces, both of which were characters and factions in the Dragonlance setting. Now, what's interesting about this, right, is that this was actually, as opposed to the other the other Silverbox games, which are not great. Just gonna put that mildly. You can go watch my videos on Heroes of the Lance or Shadow Sorcerer. They're not great. War of the Lance, at least as far as it was regarded back around the time it was released in the reviews and magazines at the time, was very good. People very much thought it was a great game. It played well, was well thought out, and generally people were like, this is pretty good. The reason that I will not be making a video about War of the Lance is because, and I'm somewhat embarrassed to be saying this, I can't really tell what's going on. Maybe this is just me not having played these types of games when they came out at the time they were released, but I have tried and tried and tried. I have read through the manuals that are included and found online God knows how many times. I just cannot figure out how to adequately play these games, or this game. I can look at the screen, I can make things happen. I have no idea what's actually going on. Whether it's in the main map screen, whether it's in the unit management screen, whether it's in the combat screen, it's just going over my head. And I don't feel like it would be fair for me to try and evaluate this game on its own merits if I cannot adequately, truly understand what is happening. Unless I wanted to just make a video talking about how I can't understand what's happening, which seems really dumb. And so it's disappointing. What was most disappointing about this for me is that this is apparently the good Silverbox game, according to the reviews, unlike the other three. And I just can't wrap my head around it well enough to feel comfortable enough to make a video about it, which is really disappointing. If that ever heck, if you played this game and you want to like detail it to me a little bit, like I will put out that bat signal. If you can help me understand what the hell is going on here, please do, because I would like to play this game and see if it is actually as good as people said it was. Moving on is going to be another Silverbox game, which is Dragons of Flame. This is another Dragonlance game. This one was developed by US Gold and published by Strategic Simulation. It was on a whole bunch of different consoles. Right. It plays... This one is very simple. There is not some grand reason as for why I won't make a video about this one. The reason I won't make a video about this one is because it is basically the exact same game as Heroes of the Lands. It plays identically. It has a few updates. It looks ever so slightly better from a graphical standpoint. It's somewhat better from a sound standpoint. It was expanded a bit. It now features an overworld map where you can run around on, but the core of its gameplay is the same side-scrolling, awkward, fighting enemies, trying to position yourself while also running away from enemies and trying to reach the end that the first game in Heroes of the Lance was. This was one I beat Dragons of Flame, if I'm not mistaken, or at least got very close. Sometimes with these older games, it's hard to tell if you actually beat them or not, for being completely frank. And when I was done and I started working on the script, I realized I was just repeating myself from the first video about Heroes of the Lance. So what I really should have done is included Dragons of Flame in the video for Heroes of the Lance, but I wasn't aware that they were that similar at that time. The game is noteworthy for... It's based on the campaign module of the same name, Dragons of Flame, right? And as well as I believe one of the Dragonlance novels. Because that would just make sense, because the Dragonlance modules and novels were basically based off the same thing, so if it's adapting a module, I would imagine it's adapting the book as well. Again, I haven't read the Dragonlance books, but that's what I would imagine. But yeah, this one is just a case of I don't see much point in repeating myself. There is a certain amount of repetition in any of these videos when it comes to outlining the rule sets and so forth, but that is just a natural thing that really can't be avoided. This is literally the exact same game with a few very minor improvements that are nowhere near enough to set it apart from its predecessor. So, Dragons of Flame, I'm sorry, I'm not upset about not having to play this game again, because shockingly, just like the first game, though it's not necessarily difficult or hard to get through, it's boring as sin. So I'm not that upset about not having to play this game again. Third, we have another Dragonlance game, which is Dragonstrike. Now this is likely, and why I wanted to talk about it, probably the most interesting D&D game ever. I'm aware of what I just said. Dragonstrike is a flight simulator in which you play as a knight who gets to ride around on a dragon and fight other dragons. It is ridiculously cool in premise. This was around the time in the 90s when flight simulator games were becoming a lot more popular. It has a set number of missions, which you can go through and obviously play throughout the game. And it, similarly to the other Dragonlance games, adapts parts of the books and modules. The reason that I will not be playing Dragonstrike, and this is somewhat embarrassing, is that I cannot play it without becoming ill. I'm not sure what it is. Flight simulators typically don't bother me. I don't know what it is about this game specifically, whether it's something to do with the graphics or the speed that it plays at, but I begin to feel quite unwell whenever I play this game. Getting the footage for this video, if you might notice, I'm leaning pretty heavily on the intro cutscenes and whatnot, because playing this game is decidedly uncomfortable for me. I don't know why. It's a very cool game. It was developed by Westwood, the same Westwood that made the fantastic Eye of the Beholder games. This one is easily, out of these games that I'm talking about in this video, the most disappointing one for me. I really wish, and who knows, maybe I'll wake up one day and I can play it, but I'll be brutally honest, I have been trying to play this game for about 2.5 years now. I mean, what, it's 20... Yeah, the first time I tried playing this game was in like the middle of 2023. So this is being recorded in November of 2025. It's been about 2.5 years, and I have not seen any improvement to the point that I actually think I can play through the whole thing. Maybe at some point I'll just suck it up and do it, but I really... Listen, as much as I love making videos for you all, I'm not super interested in making myself ill to do so. It's a shame. It's a ridiculously cool game. It's a good game. It got fantastic reviews. It is still fairly well regarded. And the fact that it's so different from basically every other D&D game, what makes it different, right, is that unlike a lot of D&D games that are D&D in name only, this is, in fairness, D&D in name only as well, but it's a very unique way of doing so. It's not a dumb side-scroller or a weird hack-and-slash game, right? It is truly unique. It is the only D&D flight simulator that we've ever gotten, and frankly, will ever get. So, maybe one day it won't make me sick to play it, but that day does not seem to be coming anytime soon. So, my apologies. It's very cool. If you want to watch a video about it, William SRD has a great one where he basically goes through it in actually both versions of the game, because he did a video on the traditional flight sim game, and then also there was a weird like top-down shooter for the NES that I don't think is nearly as good. But go watch those. I've mentioned them before, I believe, because I've mentioned this fact that I can't play this game before, and it really just... I'm getting angry sitting here talking about it. But it's really cool. You should check it out if you are interested in these older D&D games. Lastly, we have Deathkeep, released in 1995. It was developed by a group called Lion Entertainment, and it's most interesting probably for the fact that it was originally released for the 3DO, which is a long-forgotten console at this point, before it was later moved to the PC. Now, what interested me most in talking about this game is that it is a first-person dungeon crawler, much like Eye of the Beholder. But unlike Eye of the Beholder, it's actually freeform, so rather than moving on tiles, you move throughout the level freely. What has stopped me from talking about this game is a few different things, though I have tried multiple times. The first one is that it plays horrendously. The controls are awful. The game seems to run almost too quickly, so like you start to move and you just start moving at light speed and it's difficult to actually know what you're doing. Everything is poorly defined, from the enemies to the items you collect to the maps that are in the levels to the levels themselves. You just kind of wind up running around in circles until you wind up somewhere you haven't been before. There's no direction. There's no story. There's no intrigue. You have 3 characters you can choose from, and only 2 classes, because you have a dwarven fighter, an elven mage, or a half-elf fighter mage. It's a very, very poorly constructed game. And that itself would not be enough to say I'm not going to speak about it. I've talked about poorly constructed games plenty of times before on this channel, and I'm sure I will do so in the future as well. The problem with this one is that there's just nothing interesting about it. It's actually set in a generic setting, so there's no world intrigue, there's no characters that we're familiar with. There is just nothing to this game. It is a bland, boring dungeon crawler that plays like garbage. And if I wanted to make a video, could I just really buckle down and force myself to get through the game so that I could spend 10 minutes just railing on it? Sure, I could do that. What's the point? Right? Like, there reaches a point where when you only have awful things to say about a game, both from a gameplay and thematic and whatever else standpoint, you start to reach the point of why am I even talking about this? And that was where I reached with Deathkeep. I tried and tried and tried. I tried to find different ways to make it interesting, but even the scripts that I wrote up were just incredibly boring when all was said and done, because there's just not enough to this game to actually speak about. It truly is maybe, at least out of all the D&D games I've played, and I understand there are some very old ones out there that that I realistically can't play because they're just so old and for systems and have never been ported. This is the most inconsequential D&D game I have played. It is worth precisely nothing. Not even from an intrigue standpoint, right? Like, Descent to Undermountain and Blood and Iron are bad games, but they are interesting whether it be for the stories of how they were made or the ways they play. Blood and Iron is obviously a fighting game. This game is just boring dreck. And I almost feel mean being so frank, but that's where we're at with Deathkeep. It was apparently somewhat better on the 3DO, but not by much. And I don't know, like, I'm not getting my hands on the 3DO version. I'm just not. I'm sorry. I like collecting games. I also hate being a wasteful person, and I'm not going to collect a 3DO version of a game and a 3DO console to talk about one game that has nothing going for it. It's just simply, frankly, not worth my time or yours. This was the last game that SSI actually published for Dungeons & Dragons before they lost the license. And it's a pretty depressing way for what was such a fruitful partnership to end. So there you have it. The 3 games I definitely will never talk about for Dungeons & Dragons, and the one that I might at some point if things change. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This was very cathartic for me, actually, because I hate working on things and then not being able to deliver them, because that means you don't get as much cool stuff at the end of the day. And it lets me give these videos a place to be seen. There are videos of these games, it gives me a place for these games to be seen. There are videos of all of these games. If they pique your interest, please go seek them out. All of them are available to be bought if you would like to try them for yourself. But for me, they are just not worth making videos about. Except for this one.